Hey everyone, welcome to GMAT Club live session with me. It's been a while. I have not been on the YouTube channel for a very long time. By a long time, I mean about a month, but 1 month seems fairly long. Clearly, I've been busy. By the way, for all those who don't know me, I'm Souvik. I'm a recent alum at the University of Michigan Law School of Business. Just moved to Seattle, started my job with a big tech company as a product manager. And as a result of which, I don't get to spend as much time as I did with GMAT Club, which is a pretty sad element of my life. But I'm very happy to be here. I realize that round one deadlines are coming in close for some of you and already over for many others. So I wanted to come in and check in and share some of the strategies that I used when I was applying almost 3 years back now. And I applied to many schools twice. So I wanted to come in and check and share some of the strategies to apply to many schools in one round, pros and cons, and how to really create a strategy for you round two people who are planning to apply to schools either fresh in round two or as a do-over because you didn't quite get the outcome you deserved or you hoped in round one. But before we jump in, let's do a quick introduction. So I'd love to know where you're from right now. So on the live chat, feel free to drop in with city you're tuning in from and what do you really hope to get out of the session. I'd love to see some of the responses while I get my slides in order. So yeah, so let's do it. I see a lot of people tuning in, so and a lot of people jumping in as well. Um, so somebody is saying the quality of voice is bad. Is my audio not coming in and out okay? Sometimes this happens with AirPods. I'm happy to change to my regular microphone. Okay, got it, got it. I will fix this problem. Just give me a second. Let's see. How do you guys, can you guys hear my voice better? Is this better? No, Kingshot, I'm not on mute. Let's check for audio, see if things are okay. Awesome. This looks good. Great. Hello. Think I'm back. How about audio and video? Tell me. Hey, Deepak, thanks for finishing your dinner. I will make sure that this is worth your time. Perfect. Thanks for the feedback. Sometimes all you need to do is restart your computer, which is ridiculous. Why is that a solution to every single computer problem? That should not be the case, but unfortunately it is. So awesome. Thanks for letting me know that video and audio is coming through okay. Again, by the way, I'm using the same AirPods, the same Bluetooth connection. It just magically starts working just because I restarted my computer. Karan, you're asking me which frames of glasses I'm using. Thanks. I like these. I have a really big face, so I need to have glasses that are really big as well. Awesome. So I'm checking where you guys are from. I see a ton of people from India, Colombia. This is great. Um, Kolkata, which is where I'm from, which is great. Um, Nepal, that is awesome. Indonesia, very international audience today. Love it. All right, let me quickly share my screen again. There you go. Cool. So as I mentioned before, what we are talking about today is how you apply to many schools um, in the single round without having to pull all your hair out. Okay. And it's a tricky proposition because sometimes schools have very lengthy application, different essays, and different recommendations. Just to give you a little bit of background, I applied to 12 schools in round one for the 2018 application cycle, meaning I applied to about 12 schools between the time frame of March through September. I was done with my GMAT back in January. I was working on my resume a little bit throughout February, and from March started applying to schools, and then finished it by September. And I remember there was this time I was looking at about 8 to 10 schools, but I wanted to make sure that I get into schools. And there was one school that I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to apply to. That was NYU Stern, and it's a great school. It's a top 12, top 13 program, and does really well with tech and consulting, which were the two things I was trying to get into. But I realized that at the end of August, end of September, I think, and it was a week before the deadline. And I was like, this is not going to happen. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. And but one of my friend who was also applying to NYU just told me, hey, let's just do it. We'll just see what happens. It's like, okay. So I looked at my older applications from Columbia and Booth, and I realized that I can repurpose a lot of this content. And I went to a cafe next to my house. I spent about 3 hours, and within that 3 hours, my application was done. And it was not a really bad application because guess what? I got in, and that was the moment I realized that a lot of my prep work for application was not all that efficient. I could have been significantly more efficient in my application, which would have reduced dramatically the amount of time I was spending in writing my essays and writing the application, but also give me a better sense of what people are looking for because I'm not constantly going to the drawing board. I'm using some of the same learning, some of the same skills that I was using for application. All right, so let's just jump in. Let's try to make this a slightly more interactive session because I want to hear from you guys and what you think about some of my strategies. Okay, so um, business schools have many types of essays. The first one, which I think is the most important, are the leadership essays. And leadership essays can be of different types, but I think overall, the biggest bucket of leadership essays come from accomplishment. So tell me something that you have done well. Tell me something that you're proud of. Tell us about a time when you had to work within a team and things like that. So, for accomplishment, you want to have stories in your back pocket that talks about teamwork, that talks about persuasion. Teamwork would be anything that you accomplished with coordination, like without other people, you wouldn't be able to get it done. Um, so this sort of brings out the value of collective action. You could not. It's hard to move mountains alone. So that's why you may want to involve other people. Then the second thing that I want to highlight within teamwork is also not only the contribution that you made and others made, but at the same time, how you mobilized other people in your cause. How did you motivate them to join you in the stuff that you were doing? Because empathy and being able to persuade people is also something that people are looking for. Now, think about this. If you have a teamwork story that goes like this, hey, like I had this big project and I knew that I would not be able to get it done, so get it done alone in time. So I leveraged some of my coworkers and I persuaded them to join my team and get this project done together. I was not only able to utilize some of their skills, but also I made better relationships as a result of this collaboration that you did. Oh, is my AirPods creating issues again? Interesting. Let me just check. This is really annoying. I'm really sorry.
Okay, let's try that. This should be better. Um, okay, so now think about this story as a story that tells the reader about both of these values. Not only you're able to mobilize your team, but also you're able to persuade them in your plan of action, right? And so what I would encourage you to do to have the same example which highlights both of these traits, not have different examples, because business schools will often ask you for examples where you worked in a team, for examples where you couldn't really work in a team, for examples when you had to persuade someone, influence other people. So those things need to come together. And if you have a separate essay for every single one of these topics, you're going to kill yourself. You can't have a separate essay for every single element that business schools might be looking for. So what you want to do here is making sure that one story sort of encompasses multiple values. Okay. And it's the same for a failure story as well, because a failure story sort of has two different things. First is owning up that, hey, I screwed up. This was a problem and I did not rise to the occasion. And maybe it could be a failure story on not being able to deliver the quality that you asked for, or not being able to get a project done in time. And as a result, there was more money spent than needed. So that's the ownership element. You're owning up and you're standing on this pedestal and you're saying, look, man, my bad. But there's another element to a failure story, which is where you reflected on this challenge and you reflected on this failure and how you applied it to a different context. So that sort of shows not only that you, hey, you have ownership, but also you used that experience to be a better person, to be a better leader, be a better manager, be a better engineer, whatever you did in the past. So now, instead of having two specific stories for this, what I would push you to do to have one story that captures the owning up to the failure, and one story that talks about the reflection and the learning. So shortening the number of stories that you have, but making each of these stories multidimensional is going to really, really help you. So instead of having to write 4 different essays, you're only going to write 2. And finally, like one other leadership, this is rare, this is not super common, is a personal story where where the school will try to ask you a question around something that you do outside of work. Um, I know Booth will ask you that question this year, right? So Booth has a question on, look, we know your work, we know your goals. Tell us something that you're proud of that you do outside of work. And it's a great way to show how you're curious or how you challenge the status quo. It could be a volunteering experience. It could be the experience with a friend or a family member. So there are ways to get similar values within that story as well. Awesome. So I'm guessing video and audio are coming through okay, which is awesome. So let's move on. So I would say this is the biggest element, and I would not recommend more than 3 stories for this. If you are really stuck and if a school has a particular, really peculiar kind of an essay, you may have to write a new one. But overall, 3 stories should do it. 1 story for accomplishment, 1 story for failure, and 1 story for a personal development. And again, I would push you to not write the personal development till you absolutely have to. Because if you're not applying to Booth, or if you're not applying to a school that needs it, you may not have to write it at all. But that comes with a caveat too, because sometimes a Stanford essay, which is what matters most to you and why, the personal element can actually help you shine some light on your professional accomplishment as you tie in your stories together. All right, so the second most important thing after leadership essays are school essays. And school essays, I thought that I had to work absolutely separately for each school because, well, each school is different. I later realized that even though the schools may be different, the structure and the format and the ingredients that go into a really good school essay will largely be the same. So generally, a school essay can be anywhere between like, hey, why MBA? Why this school? Like straightforward, right? But it could also be, how would a Booth help you achieve your goals, right? They're asking the same exact thing, they're just phrasing it differently. And often, like for example, Wharton would have an essay around how would you contribute to Wharton? Not only what you will get from Wharton, but what are you giving to Wharton? What do you bring to the table, right? So I would recommend for school essays, it's only one essay. That's it. I mean, you change elements across different schools, but ideally, it's just one essay. So here's what I would recommend that you do. Have your why MBA picture really, really clear. That doesn't change for schools. Unless you're changing your goals for specific schools, why would you do that? That is not encouraged. And sometimes that might be a clever thing to do. Like, for example, people who often apply to Stanford or Sloan would try to throw in maybe like a tech entrepreneurship angle. While applying to Kellogg or Booth, they would apply to be a consultant. Those are clever strategies. That's fair. But that also requires significantly more work, not only for the essay writing stage, but also when you'll start interviewing. You'll probably have to remember multiple different scenarios, multiple goals. So I wouldn't recommend it. Have a single goal. So anyway, so the why MBA element does not change. And I'll get to goals in just a bit. But the why school element, don't start from scratch for every single school. Have the same structure. So generally, this is what I recommend. And I'll get into details of essays, of these specific essays, if you think that might be an interesting session later. But the why school element has 4 different things. The first thing is your big overarching career vision. Like, for example, when I was applying to schools, my big vision was how technology is changing education, and I want to be a part of it. So I was applying with a short-term goal of being a product manager in tech, which sort of gives me a broad experience of what I'm doing right now. And then in the long term, I want to be able to use tech and use the scale that comes with tech to apply to education, because that's my passion. That's what I did before MBA, and that's what I want to do long term in the future, right? So I would always start with that. That's my hook. That's my why MBA. And then for specific schools, I would have 3 sections. I mentioned 4 things in total. The first one is your overarching career vision, your positioning statement. And then the 3 things is A, academically, what I'm going to do from the school. And academically, I would talk about different classes, maybe different professors, maybe some more academic real world experience. So for example, for Michigan, it was one class called New Product Development, which is a product that I ended up taking. It was a great class. I loved that class. It was Professor Sriram. It was one of my favorite classes. I also talked about map, and I said that, hey, I want to do a map focused on tech because it sort of gives me an opportunity to work in a big problem. And at Ross, big tech companies have map projects like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and I had never worked for these companies before, so that would give me a solid footing in a very low risk environment. Then after you're done with academic, I would move your focus to professional development. So how does this school help you gain what you want to do short term? So short term, I wanted to be a PM at a big tech company. So for professional development, I talked about the tech club. I talked about the Seattle and the San Francisco tech treks. And by the way, these are the things that I ended up doing. And it doesn't have to be your case. You have to write the essay that gets you in. But for me, I felt that it was sort of consistent. I also talked about a new product lab that is like a simulation of where you can write your own app, write your own program. It's a very tech oriented class that I took, but it was experiential and more related to my career. So I put it under professional development. And finally, I would talk about extracurricular and leadership. So where you can walk through some of the stuff that you want to do for fun. So I thought of business school as a 80-20 kind of a principle. So 80% I want to gain because, hey, I'm spending $180,000 for this experience. I want to make sure I get the most out of it. So 80% of my business school time was spent on getting stuff to help me be a better leader, be a better tech PM, whatever. And the 20% of the time, I knew that I wanted to spend on things that I was already very good at. So I wanted to leverage my strengths and my things that I know to give back to the Ross community. And I wouldn't really say give back to the community. It sounds like a little flaky and very like save the world types, but I wanted to enjoy what I was doing, right? So I was a teacher before. I taught for 2 years. So I definitely wanted to do something that involves a certain kind of mentorship. So I signed up to be a peer coach. I helped a ton of people with their resumes, with their tech recruiting and consulting recruiting, and I enjoyed it. That led me build my network with a ton of MBA ones, and that's something that I love doing. And because I had interned at Apple, and Apple started recruiting in Michigan pretty heavily the next year, there were a ton of people that I sort of formed a group with, and we worked on that together. So I wrote about that, but I also wrote about the Social Venture Fund. It's sort of an extracurricular activity. It's an impact investing fund within Michigan where you apply to be an associate, and you can vet different startups, and as a whole, the fund decides to invest about $50,000 a year. And I wanted to be in the education arm because I knew that there's an education arm, and I'm all about education and ed tech. So I wanted to contribute to that. So anyway, just to recap, your school essays have 4 different sections. Number 1, your main motivation, the overarching statement, your career vision. Then the second thing is academic. How does the academic elements of the school help you achieve that right out of the MBA? Not the long-term stuff, but the immediate short-term post-MBA stuff. The third thing is your professional development. Like, how are you building the skills that you need to get the job that you want, right? And then the final thing is extracurricular things that you like to do. Like a lot of people talk about creating a club based on food. There's a lot of association groups, identity groups. So that's the way to talk about this. But anyway, the structure, again, is largely similar. You will not have to write a totally different story just because it's a different school. So again, this whole thing, it's just one essay. By the way, throw me questions if you have questions. I will keep answering them from time to time, but I only have 2 slides left, so we can take questions later. Awesome. So after school's essays, you have goals essays, and goals essays are the simplest to write, but they are the hardest to think and to come up with. So your goals essays are basically your short-term goals and your long-term goals. But if you're going to write about, especially in the crowd, it was a very international crowd, so it's very competitive for you. If you're going to write about post MBA, I want to be a senior consultant or a consultant in Bain or BCG, and then long term, I want to be a partner at Bain or BCG. That's fine. That's totally fine. A ton of people do that. But think about the message that you're sending. You are just going to use business school as a way to get a job. Is that why most people do it? Absolutely. But is that really inspiring and sets you apart? No, no, it's the most boring thing that you can ever write. So, what I would recommend is you start from a big change that you want to bring to the world. And it doesn't have to be like, like the civil disobedience movement that Mahatma Gandhi led. It doesn't have to be that big, but it has to be bigger than you, right? It shouldn't be that me owning a mansion in the Bay Area. That's not a big change. That's only a change for you. Well, good for you. You have 5 bedrooms, but you need to have a big change that can inspire people. So for me, the big change was to build an edtech product that can scale in India. Because, well, I work in India, I saw the lack of access and the exposure that my students had. It was almost like they were cut off from the rest of the world because they didn't have great internet, or they didn't have computers, or they were just poor. And often people have this thing that if we just give poor kids an iPad, they will magically start becoming better students. Well, that's just not true. It's ridiculous. So I wanted to build tools that empower them, that build skills, that also piques interest, but also keeps them accountable, but also brings parents into the picture so that kids are not isolated, bring teachers. Anyway, so that was my pitch. I wanted to transform digital education in India as my long-term vision. It's inspiring, at least for me, or at least for the people who read my essays and thought that I should get in. Is it like the biggest thing in the world? Absolutely not. I did not want to be a CEO. I did not want to be CX anything. But I wanted to work backwards from this big change that I wanted to bring. AP, I see your question. It's a great question. I'll definitely get to that. Just give me a moment to finish this. Now, from that big change, think about what position do you have to create that change. So my position to bring about this change was being a product leader or an entrepreneur, a person that has this idea and then builds this whole thing from scratch to make this change happen. Now, that's my long-term goal. Now, how do I get there? I want product experience. I want to build products at scale, which was only possible because I'm not a software engineer. I don't know how to write code that is good enough to build a really scaled app. So I wanted to be a product manager in a big tech company, right? So that was the chain of command that I followed in my goals essay. And look, did I ever mention a school specific thing? No. So it's just one essay. And again, I respond to a question here. It's not a copy paste. You have to contextualize. But for this one, if the school just asks you for a long and short-term goal, I don't think you need to contextualize. I think you should be able to copy paste stuff. So there is benefit to be a little bit generic here, especially if you're going to apply to a ton of schools. So how many essays so far for this one? Just one. How many essays have we written so far? We wrote 3 essays for leadership. We wrote 1 essay for why the school, and we wrote 1 essay for goals. So we have written 5 essays so far, and that's it. Okay, cool. So let's move to the next section on how do these fit in. Okay, so here I have 5 different schools, and if your screen is blurry, if the text is not coming through, try to full screen the YouTube app. I think that will make it better, and change the resolution to 720p. So that will help. But I will read it out loud as well. So I have here essays from a lot of different schools. So I have essays from Wharton, Stanford, Columbia, Berkeley, and Kellogg. So let's try to read these essays and see if we can apply some of our strategies, right? So for Wharton, what do you hope to gain professionally from the Wharton MBA, right? Classic Y school essay. You follow that structure and you'll get there. Then second, what contributions can you make at Wharton, right? So what do you bring to the table? And again, it's the same school essay, because in the school essay, not only we talked about why the school, but also we went through what do you bring to the table? How can you contribute? So you should be very well positioned to write this essay as well. Now, let's go to Stanford. So Stanford asks you about what matters most to you and why. And again, this is a personal motivation and a leadership question. You should be able to start with your long-term career vision, perhaps if that ties in with what you're really passionate about, and then go through your personal leadership example, which was essay number 3 in slide 1, and then maybe tie in some other leadership essays, but overall, that should be able to cover it. Why Stanford? Again, typical why the school essay should totally work in the same structure. So the first Wharton essay and the second Stanford essay are essentially the same. You're just changing the specific school elements. Let's look at Columbia. So through your resume and recommendations, you have a clear sense of your professional path to date. What are your career goals over the next 3 to 5 years? And what in your imagination would be a long-term dream job? Hey, guess what? This is just the goals essay. That's it, right? Again, no need to write a new essay. Why do you feel Columbia Business School is a good fit for you? Why the school essay? What makes you feel, okay, I'm moving to Berkeley. What makes you feel alive when you are doing it and why? This is a personal narrative, right? So use essay number 3 from the leadership slide. So that should be able to do it. The definition of a successful leadership has evolved over the last decade and will continue to change. What do you need to develop to become a successful leader? And again, why MBA is the essay here. They are actually asking you why MBA in a really clever, conceited way. So your why MBA is your gap, right? So this is your short-term goal. This is what you want to be, but there's a reason why you can't do it right now. And to sort of work on that reason, you're going to business school. So that there's a gap, right? And again, Berkeley is just asking for the gap. So this is actually a why MBA essay, cleverly disguised in a verbose, weird prompt, okay? So that's just your essay number 2. Then finally, Kellogg. Let's read Kellogg. Kellogg's purpose is to educate, equip, and inspire brave leaders who create lasting value. Don't you love this when they write a statement? Then provide a recent example where you have demonstrated leadership and created value. What challenges did you face and what did you learn? Again, just a leadership essay, right? Garden variety leadership essay. Nothing changes here. Second, values values are what guide you in your life and work. What values are important to you and how have they influenced you? Now, this is a tricky one, okay? This is not very straightforward, but let's look at the first slide real quick. This is the reason why I threw these terms as guides on how you write these essays. And guess what? These things are actually values. Innovation is a value. Persuasion is a value. Teamwork is a value. Being reflective is a value. So throughout all your stories, you already have your values and examples written down. So why should you really spend hours on thinking about, hey, what's my value? Again, you shouldn't. You don't have to. You already have those things written down. So anyway, just to recap, we wrote 5 essays, and 5 essays could easily get us through 10 essays from 5 schools. Do you have to customize them a little bit to make them fit into your school structure? Oh, absolutely you do. But do you have to write the essay from scratch? No, absolutely not. If you do that, you're not being efficient. You're being me from 3 years back. Don't be me. Be better than me. Awesome. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick and then go to answer questions. Somebody said I have a sore throat. Is my voice still bad? Let me just quickly ask my friend. So my voice should be okay. I have not done GMAT Club live sessions in a while, so I'm a little out of touch, okay? I'm a little rusty. And generally, AirPods work just fine. Today, AirPods decided to crap out. All right, so I'm gonna take some questions, and feel free to throw me more questions. Thanks, Bindu. I appreciate it. I like that you like my input. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and that will help GMAT Club get into more eyeballs. Awesome. The other thing that I would recommend and ask you if you have registered for MBA Spotlight. If you don't know what MBA Spotlight is, what's wrong with you? We did this really big MBA fair last year. I mean, this year over the summer. It feels like a long time ago, but I was hosting sessions with different schools and adcoms and current students. We had a lot of fun. It was 5 days of a lot of work, but we're doing it again, and we're doing it again in just a month. So go to GMAT Club, look for MBA Spotlight, register. Lots of schools are coming. This is your way to get yourself in front of these schools and also learn from the schools a lot so that you can write the best why the school essay. Awesome. Let's look at a few more questions. Cool. Will winning gold medal in team sport in under 19 national games tournament work? As an accomplishment, sure. Essay number 3 for the first slide, go back and check. For the personal motivation essay, 100%. But remember that the more recency is a big component in MBA application. The more recent your examples are, the better. But if you can tie in that, hey, you won this gold medal, and you leverage this value. Maybe it was teamwork. Maybe it was empathy, maybe it was compassion, whatever. And you brought this value and you bring this value to work every day. Then suddenly you're talking about a value that you developed in the past, but you carry to this day, and then it becomes a recent example, right? So even if it happened when you were 18 years old, there are ways to make it a lot better. Okay, cool. I'm going to look at more questions. Let's see. Why school? Why MBA? Okay, I will try to do a session. Let me figure out some opening, and also leave a comment after the video is posted. GMAT Club checks those comments as well. So if you want a session, let me know in a comment. How to showcase 10 plus years of experience? Your resume. Your essays will be the highlight, the best stories, the best moments from your experience, but your resume will give adcoms a sense of your overall experience. So your resume will be good. Feel free to put a lot more emphasis on recent work experience. So work that you did 10 years back, don't spend maybe more than one bullet. Does it bother schools if we copy paste the same essays everywhere? Good question. It does bother them if they find out. If they don't find out, why would it bother you? For example, if you wrote Michigan Ross in your why tuck essay, that will bother them. But why would you copy paste? You should not copy paste anything. Control C, Control V should not be a keyboard action that you do in your business school. Type it in, type the new stuff. Have the structure ready, be very clear about what you're going to write, but make a fresh new application. Don't copy paste anything. That's not a good idea. Would you have to justify the change you want to bring? Example, link it to your past experiences. Sometimes I think it's good if it is, because everybody wants to save the world from poverty or hunger. But I think if it's personal to you, if it's something that stemmed from a personal experience, it just makes the example a lot stronger. Because I was in education, I saw these challenges firsthand. So I could claim with a fair amount of authority that, that this is a big problem, and I want to be a part of the movement that solves the problem. And by the way, this doesn't always have to be very inspiring education, children, and whatnot. It could be maybe you want to bring in more efficiency in how communication happens within the workplace. I recently read someone's essay on improving communication in the workplace because nobody read the CEO emails that she wrote, and she was demotivated, and that's why she wants to get into consulting, learn the skills to be a better communicator, and then bring that change within organization. I think it was a fantastic change, fantastic goal. How to tie in your past experiences with your long-term goal. So think about a moment in your past experiences when you thought that, oh, this needs to change. I wish somebody would change this. That came from work or a personal example, but mostly from work. And then think about if you were the CEO of a company, if you had a ton of money, a ton of resources, a ton of people working for you, how would you change that? What would you do? And again, that's your long-term goal. Seems you have a sore throat. I don't. I stay home. Already answered this. Oh, I'm getting a lot of questions. Okay. Can you touch on scholarship essays? There are no scholarship essays. No school will ask you to write the scholarship essays. Scholarship can be either merit-based, which is based on your application, your quantitative abilities, GMAT score, GPA, and all of that, or need-based. For need-based scholarship, there might be an application, but I doubt that it's an essay. All right. Again, this is the MBA Spotlight link. Register for MBA Spotlight. It's going to be a great fair. Ton of schools are coming, so show some love. Okay. Won't it be countered if you could not achieve this through first MBA? What is going to change with the second MBA? Okay, so it's a second MBA question. I'm guessing MBA from India. Fair enough. That's a good question. But, be upfront about what were the shortcomings in your first MBA. What could you not do? A big part of doing a second MBA is enjoy the diversity, is enjoy people from all different parts of the world, but also having access maybe to a North American or a European market. I think that's super important as well. You only have certain companies that hire from India. For example, it's very hard to get a product manager role for AWS, for example, in India, because most PM teams for AWS are in this side of the world, in Seattle. So you can explain some of that, and also if you did an MBA in India, you're probably very young. People don't really make their best decisions when they're 20 years old. So I think being honest and being upfront about that is totally fine. How about recommendation from your supervisor? Does she have right to all 10 plus essays for you, as far as I know? Yes, fair enough question, but most recommendations are fairly standard. They ask the same questions, and it's a good call out. Recommendation is a big piece, and it's very challenging. And your recommender by the end will not like you very much. So make sure that you're giving that person appreciation for the time that he or she is spending. Give them some gifts. Don't bribe them, but show that you appreciate their time, but also help them. Help them show the examples, write the examples for them so that they can then write it in their own language. But definitely try to do as much as you can for them, so that they have to only restructure or agree with what you gave them and not really have to invent stuff. Awesome. How bad is 3.2 GPA in finance? I don't know. It depends on the school. It depends on your position in the class. You don't come with the GPA. Exactly. You just don't. Awesome. So this was a great session. I'm over by almost 17 minutes. I will try to see if there is demand for specific essays. I'm happy to write slides on how to tackle these 5 essays, the 5 universal essays that we just talked about. Like the video if you liked it. Don't forget to register for MBA Spotlight. And finally, make sure that if you're applying to 10, 12 plus schools, reach out to other people, see what they are doing, but follow a big structure and then fill stuff in that are school specific. Thank you so much for joining. I'll speak to you guys soon.